The Beatles didn't just write songs, they reinvented the recording studio itself. With every new album, they challenged the limits of what musicians, producers, and engineers thought was possible. Some sessions introduced revolutionary technology. Others changed the way albums were made forever. Together, they transformed Abbey Road Studios into the birthplace of modern rock production. Number 5. Because, 1969.
Because the world is round.
Sometimes the biggest revolution isn't loud. Sometimes it's almost whispered. When the Beatles gathered at EMI Studios on August 1st, 1969, to record Because, they weren't trying to create another chart-topping single. Instead, they focused on something far more ambitious, capturing one of the most beautiful vocal performances of their entire career. The idea began with John Lennon. Inspired after hearing Yoko Ono play Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata backwards on the piano, Lennon asked her to reverse the chord progression. The haunting sequence immediately sparked a new composition, and the Beatles entered the Abbey Road sessions determined to transform the simple idea into something extraordinary. The recording process was painstaking. John Lennon, Paul McCartney, and George Harrison stood together around a single microphone, carefully singing intricate three-part harmonies. Rather than settling for one performance, producer George Martin had them repeat the harmonies 2 more times. The 9 vocal tracks were then layered together, creating the rich, choir-like sound that gives the recording its almost ethereal atmosphere. The session also showcased another glimpse of the future. George Harrison incorporated one of the earliest Moog modular synthesizers into the arrangement, not as a flashy novelty, but as a subtle musical texture that blended seamlessly with guitars, harpsichord, and voices. At a time when electronic instruments were still viewed as experimental curiosities, the Beatles demonstrated how synthesizers could enhance emotion rather than distract from it. When the session finally ended, everyone in Studio 2 knew they had captured something unique.
Love is all, love is you.
Because wasn't built around explosive guitar solos or groundbreaking special effects. Its revolution came through precision, restraint, and flawless musicianship. Looking back, the August 1st, 1969 recording session remains one of the defining moments of Abbey Road, a masterclass in vocal production that influenced generations of artists and proved that innovation doesn't always mean making music louder. Sometimes, it means making it more beautiful. Number 4. Strawberry Fields Forever, 1966.
Let me take you down, 'cause I'm going.
Some recording sessions improve a song. Others rewrite the rules of recording itself. When John Lennon began work on Strawberry Fields Forever in late 1966, he wasn't satisfied with a single arrangement. The song evolved rapidly in the studio, transforming from an intimate, dreamlike performance into a far more elaborate production filled with brass, cellos, trumpets, and surreal sonic textures. The problem was that Lennon loved both versions. The first recording featured a gentle, reflective atmosphere built around acoustic instruments and mellotron, capturing the song's fragile, emotional core. Days later, the Beatles recorded a completely different interpretation, slower, richer, and dramatically orchestrated under George Martin's direction, with sweeping brass and string arrangements that gave the song an almost cinematic quality.
Nothing to get hung about.
When George Martin asked John which version he preferred, Lennon's answer seemed impossible. He wanted both. There was just one problem. The 2 recordings had been made in different keys and at different tempos. Under normal circumstances, combining them simply couldn't be done. But George Martin and engineer Geoff Emerick refused to accept that answer. Inside EMI Studios, they carefully altered the playback speed of both tapes, slowing one down while speeding the other up, until the keys, tempos, and vocal pitch aligned closely enough to create a seamless transition. It was an astonishing feat of analog tape engineering, achieved entirely by hand years before digital editing existed. The results sounded almost magical. Listeners never noticed the moment the recording shifts from one take to the other, yet the emotional impact changes dramatically as the song moves from intimate reflection into psychedelic grandeur. What began as 2 incompatible performances became one of the most innovative recordings in popular music.
bad as I think, it's not too bad.
Looking back, the Strawberry Fields Forever sessions changed far more than a single Beatles song. They proved that the recording studio itself could become a creative instrument, not merely a place to capture performances, but a place where entirely new realities could be constructed. That revolutionary idea would inspire generations of producers, from progressive rock and psychedelic pioneers to modern alternative artists, forever changing the way records are made. Number 3. Rain, 1966.
If the rain comes, they run.
Sometimes history is made by accident. During the Revolver sessions in April 1966, the Beatles were already pushing Abbey Road Studios beyond anything pop music had attempted before. Rain, recorded as the B-side to Paperback Writer, initially appeared to be another powerful rock recording driven by Ringo Starr's thunderous drumming and John's confident vocal. But the real breakthrough happened after the main session had ended. As the tapes were being reviewed, John Lennon reportedly heard one of the recordings played backward and was immediately captivated by the strange, dreamlike sound. Whether it happened by accident or through deliberate experimentation, the effect sparked an idea that would change rock music forever. Instead of dismissing it as a novelty, the Beatles decided to embrace it. Working alongside producer George Martin and engineer Geoff Emerick, the team carefully prepared sections of magnetic tape to run in reverse. John's vocal phrases were copied, reversed, and painstakingly edited back into the master recording. The process was incredibly time-consuming, requiring engineers to physically cut, flip, and reassemble tape by hand, long before computers or digital audio made such edits routine. The session didn't stop there. The recording was also manipulated through variable tape speed, allowing instruments to sound heavier and more powerful while giving the finished track its unmistakable psychedelic atmosphere. Combined with George Harrison's inventive guitar work and Ringo Starr's widely celebrated drum performance, Rain became unlike anything listeners had ever heard on a pop record. When the single was released in 1966, audiences had no idea how the mysterious sounds had been created. Musicians certainly noticed. For the first time, reverse audio wasn't simply a studio experiment hidden behind the scenes. It became a central creative element of a major commercial release. Suddenly, producers around the world realized that recording studios weren't just places to document performances, they could become instruments themselves. Looking back, the Rain session marked one of the most important turning points in rock production. Its revolutionary use of reversed tape, tape speed manipulation, and experimental editing opened the door for psychedelic rock, progressive rock, and countless studio innovations that followed. Without Rain, the modern recording studio might never have become the limitless creative playground it is today. Number 2. A Day in the Life, 1967.
I read the news today.
Imagine walking into Abbey Road Studios and finding 40 classically trained musicians wearing tuxedos, evening gowns, and clown noses. It sounds like fiction, but that's exactly what happened during one of the most revolutionary recording sessions in rock history. By early 1967, John Lennon and Paul McCartney had already written 2 completely different pieces for what would become A Day in the Life. John's haunting verses painted surreal scenes inspired by newspaper headlines, while Paul's lively middle section captured the routine of an ordinary morning. The challenge wasn't writing the song, it was figuring out how to connect 2 entirely different musical worlds. George Martin had an extraordinary solution.
He blew his mind out in a car.
On February 10th, and more famously, February 22nd, 1967, he assembled a 40-piece orchestra inside Abbey Road Studio 1. But instead of handing the musicians a traditional score, Martin gave them one of the strangest instructions ever heard in a recording session. Each player was told to begin on the lowest note their instrument could produce and gradually climb to the highest note possible over 24 bars. There were no melodies to follow and no harmonies to stay within. Every musician was free to improvise, creating a massive orchestral crescendo that sounded like controlled chaos. The atmosphere inside the studio matched the music. To loosen the formality of the occasion, Orchestra members were encouraged to wear colorful wigs, oversized bow ties, fake noses, and other humorous accessories over their formal attire. Cameras rolled throughout the evening, capturing a session that looked less like a classical recording and more like an artistic celebration of limitless creativity. The innovation didn't stop there. After the orchestra faded away, the Beatles gathered around 3 separate pianos to record the song's now legendary final E major chord. George Martin instructed the engineers to raise the recording level as the note slowly decayed, allowing every vibration to be captured for more than 40 seconds, a breathtaking ending unlike anything audiences had ever heard. Looking back, the A Day in the Life session became one of the defining moments in modern music. It proved that an album could be far more than a collection of singles. It could be experienced as a complete artistic statement, an idea that helped inspire progressive rock, art rock, and countless ambitious concept albums that followed. Number 1. Tomorrow Never Knows, 1966. Everything changed the moment John Lennon walked into the studio with an impossible request. As the Beatles began recording Tomorrow Never Knows during the Revolver sessions on April 6, 1966, Lennon wasn't interested in making another rock song. Inspired by the Tibetan Book of the Dead and his growing fascination with meditation and expanded consciousness, he imagined a sound that had never existed before. He turned to producer George Martin and engineer Geoff Emerick with a remarkable challenge. John wanted his voice to sound, as he famously described it, like the Dalai Lama chanting from a mountaintop. In 1966, there was no piece of studio equipment capable of producing that effect, so Geoff Emerick invented one. Instead of recording Lennon's vocal conventionally, Emerick routed it through a rotating Leslie speaker, a device normally reserved for Hammond organs. As the speaker spun, it created an eerie, swirling movement around John's voice, giving it the hypnotic, otherworldly quality he had imagined. It was one of the first times such a technique had ever been used on a rock vocal, but that was only the beginning. Around the studio, the Beatles and the engineering team prepared dozens of short tape loops containing distorted guitars, orchestral fragments, sitar-like drones, laughter, sped-up instruments, and bizarre electronic sounds. Each loop had been carefully cut, spliced into a continuous circle, and played simultaneously on multiple tape machines positioned throughout Abbey Road. The recording session became a controlled experiment in chaos. Engineers stood beside the machines, manually raising and lowering faders in real time as the tape loops drifted in and out of the mix. No 2 passes were exactly alike, meaning the final master captured a unique performance that could never be perfectly recreated. Combined with reverse tape effects, heavily compressed drums, and Paul's hypnotic bass line, the result sounded like music from another world. When Tomorrow Never Knows closed Revolver in August 1966, listeners had never heard anything remotely like it. The song shattered the idea that rock music had to be built around guitars, bass, and drums alone. Instead, it proved that the recording studio itself could become an instrument of limitless imagination, where sound could be manipulated, reshaped, and reinvented in ways impossible on a live stage. Looking back, the April 6, 1966 session wasn't simply another Beatles recording. It was the moment modern studio production was born. Without Tomorrow Never Knows, there would be no psychedelic rock as we know it, no ambient soundscapes, no sampling culture, and no countless artists who later viewed the recording studio not as a place to capture music, but as a place to create entirely new worlds of sound.